I'm absolutely thrilled for this podcast to introduce all of our listeners to Mike Hurley. In many ways, Mike, for me, was one of the starting points of this kind of journey that I took around the mindsets for selling. And it sort of coincided at a time that Mike took on a particularly senior role at Hewlett Packard, and Mike will introduce himself shortly, and became an amazing collaboration over a number of years. And some great things were achieved by Mike and his team, and really want to use this podcast to kind of surface some of the learnings that we took away from that sort of interaction together. So, Mike, thank you so much for joining us. And
my pleasure.
And I think it would be great because part of these podcasts is also sort of going back a little bit into the background of the people, where in terms of their sort of early stage careers. So I wonder if you could plot the journey for the listeners from sort of when you left school and how you ended up being in the managed.
I don't know if I can remember that far back. I'm very old, No.
You certainly don't look it, Mike. You still look sort of a young whippersnapper there. So.
I retired early.
Yeah.
So I started life as an apprentice engineer. Started life working on lathes and milling machines to manufacture bespoke equipment for the services. So that's where I started.
Well, that's something new. I didn't realise that's where your career started.
That's where I started, yeah. And then I went into part of that. I got they decided that I'd probably be better in an office because I wasn't particularly good. So they gave me a pen and a clipboard, and they put me into something called work study.
Okay.
And work study was something where you actually looked at the methods that people adopted to do things in the office and on the factory floor, and your job was to try and improve and automate. So from that, being a young man at the time of 21, IBM had launched this thing called a personal computer, and I got an import before they were launched in the UK to see if I could do something with it. And I became the resident expert in the firm that I worked on personal computers.
Okay.
And then I got offered a job at a company called Thorn EMI.
Yeah.
And we made television sets. Actually, that was the manufacturing plant at Anfield.
Yeah.
And my job was to automate things using personal computers, and I put in one of the first Ethernet networks in the UK with some other guys. And one day I was walking out to the car park with the sales guy that had been in to see me. He'd sold me all the equipment, and his car happened to be parked next to my car. And as I got in my beaten up Ford Cortina, he got in his 911 Porsche, and I said, "Blimey, that wouldn't mind one of those." He said, "Well, you need to go into sales, Mike. If you want to earn some money." He said, "By the way, you know a lot more about IT than I do, so why don't you get involved with sales?" And that was my start of my sales career, really.
Wow. Do you know, I've heard sort of similar stories. I know Carl Day has been on the podcast before, and he shared a similar story of how he started off in a role a little bit similar to yours, and then saw the cars in the car park and then decided that
that's right.
Sales would be a better paid career. But so it's interesting. It's interesting sometimes to see the journey that people have taken. So that you got involved in sales. So why don't you chart your sort of sales career then?
Well, when I started in sales, I was absolutely terrible. Awful, terrible salesman.
So what made you say that? I mean, what made you say you're terrible?
Well, I was terrified of cold calling when I first started, but
Okay.
you know, it was one of those things. And I basically I went to an initial sales school in the company that I joined, and they said, look, what you got to do is you got to, at the time, collect compliment slips, walk around, collect compliment slips, ask a few questions, and then get back to the office and call up the guy that, you know, the
Right.
secretary, you know, and make all these phone calls. And I learned pretty quickly that that was really hard work, and
Yeah.
and selling isn't about hard work. It's about being smart in terms of the way you sell and the
Okay.
things you do. So I ended up um, working for some big companies that I'd cold called, because actually the best thing I thought I could do is probably sell myself to these big companies, and then I might get
Okay.
some better education. So I worked for Computer Center in the early days when they was very
Okay.
small, and learned that what I had to do was really research customer before I called the customer and find out as much as I could about them, not
Right.
do loads and loads of phone calls, meet my cold calling target. 100 calls a day will get you 2 appointments. You know, that's because that
Yeah.
actually is that is a load of nonsense. Um, what you've got to do is use the facilities available to you to research the customers you're going to call,
Yeah.
identify some sort of mutual ground to have a discussion on, and then see if there's any need there. And so I learned to do that pretty within the first 6 months of me going into the career.
Right.
And then I started to be successful in my selling. Um, and so really learning how to qualify before I spend time on anything was the
Yeah.
key to being reasonably successful. So I went to another company. It was a company called Planning Consultancy. They were one of the largest in London at the time. Quite successful there. I met a guy, lovely fella called John Allen, who sat
Okay.
opposite me, and I said, "Why are we only taking 15% of the margin as commission? Why don't we set our own business up and go and start a business?" Which we did,
Okay.
and it was called Bell and Watson Technology,
Okay.
and we became, I think we were number 13 in the UK for IBM in terms of volume sales. We did services and as well,
Wow.
sort of basic services for customers. So I went on that journey for a few years and didn't make a huge amount of money. There was a recession and all sorts of problems.
Yeah.
So I sold the business, as much of it as I could before the receivers got me, and
Mm.
got a phone call from head of services of Europe from IBM, who was one of my customers, and said, we're setting up an outsourcing business for desktops. And because we
Right.
don't really know about servicing desktops and you used to run a business, would you join the management team and help us set
Okay.
the organization up? So that was 10 very happy years at IBM.
Yeah.
Lots and lots of good quality training, negotiation training, how to identify and sell, more qualification training, you know,
Yeah.
very good sales school,
Yeah. Yeah.
which helped me tremendously. Won a few deals while I was at IBM, or more than a few, which got me a reputation as quite a strong deal leader in the industry. And then joined Hewlett Packard. I was at IBM for 10 years. Then they asked me to join them and help them set up their outsourcing organisation, which is where I met you, Phil, pretty soon after I started.
Pretty soon. Yes, I think I'd already been working with Compaq and NHP, and was involved in sort of various sales training programs with those two organizations. And that's right. I think it was It was someone then introduced me to you at the time. And I'm not quite sure whether you and your management team had identified by that time that there was a requirement to do something different, or whether it was a chance conversation we had. I can't remember where exactly where it started.
So, okay, so it was William Mills that made the introduction to both of
Of
us.
course, yeah, William, yeah.
William got together. So, when I took over the sort of bid management activity at HP, we were doing things pretty much cookie cutter, how you'd expect. Big companies have been doing for a long time, but there was no sort of real flair and innovation in the responses that we were offering to our customers. Very little upfront research was being done, and I decided that I wanted to take the team on a journey to understand business rather than IT, but how business drives the need for IT and outsourcing. So that was the kind of thinking, and I was having a lot of difficulty trying to get anyone to have that dialogue with me in terms of sales training. And then we had a conversation, and you introduced me to your research, and third box thinking.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is really what I'm trying to achieve in terms of getting some structured training into the organisation to allow us to think differently and talk differently when we're engaging with the customer.
Yeah.
That was absolutely critical.
Yeah. So, I mean, just to discuss it also from my side, so just to give the listeners a chance to see how our two sort of lives came together at this particular point, is that I was doing a research study with HP's customers. I was interviewing them about what they wanted from salespeople. And I had begun to define a sort of a lens for looking at sales effectiveness through mindsets. And I think a lot of people that may be listening to this podcast will be familiar to them. And that the hypothesis was, because the doctorate was not finished when I met Mike, the hypothesis was, if you are able to embed a sales team with a specific set of mindsets according to what customers wanted, that it would actually lead to some kind of sales success. And two of the mindsets were proactive creativity and tactful audacity. And these two words probably resonated a little with this need to do something slightly different, slightly creative. Yep. And so, Mike had a need, in a way, to transform the mindset, I think, of the team with some amazing frameworks and tools as well. You mentioned third box thinking, which our partners in the USA had also kind of developed the Summit Group, and so these two sort of things came together, but it was at that stage it was unproven, and I think William had sort of seen a glimpse of it on that training course that he talked to you about, but that was before HP had bought Compaq. That had I think that was in a previous life of William's. But so you had two people, you and me, having this discussion right at the very early stage. You with, I think, a really big idea to do something different, supported by a company that was massive but had so little experience in managed services, because the competitive landscape, it was zero, wasn't experience. It? Absolutely zero experience. And so, there was a huge amount of risk associated with what you were doing, Mike, and the fact that you were also engaging with us with a yet unproven concept. But I think, so I think that speaks a little bit to the sort of entrepreneurial approach and mindset that you've naturally had through the building of your own business and the way that you've gone about your sort of early career, sort of coming now into this corporate world, and being prepared to take a risk on it. But I think you had quite a lot of support from the management team to do something different.
Well, I had a lot of support and a lot of resistance from various different parts of
Okay.
the business, depending on who. But
Okay.
I think it's important to add that it was the coming together for me of our two philosophies. So it was the philosophy that you were investigating within your organisation in terms of customer centricity, egocentricity, creative.
Proactive
Tactful audacity,
creativity
and
and tactful
yeah.
audacity. Yeah.
So these sort of key things, and then before I met you, in terms of what I was putting together, I was putting together the basics from, if you recall, Sun Tzu.
Oh yes, of course. Yes, that's
Yes,
great.
yeah.
That's right.
So
The art of war.
bringing
Yeah, absolutely.
these two things together,
Gosh, you
along with some
remind
other
me.
elements,
Yeah.
was, so you learn to fight, show the way, do it right, know the facts, expect the worst. All of these kind of things which are embodied within Sun Tzu,
Yeah.
with the discipline of bringing in what you were offering from your
Yeah. Yeah.
side,
Yeah.
it became a very unique
Yeah. Yeah.
combination, which was excellent for the business.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had, in terms of, what we probably refer to as the Mavericks. I mean,
Yes,
my
definitely the Mavericks.
my closest friend and colleague in the business was Alan Coffey, a man that I
Yeah.
actually miss very much. He taught me a tremendous amount
Yeah.
of the things that he knew, and he was a very insightful man, and he taught me to read the things that you can't see, really,
Okay.
within a deal. I remember one of the conversations was, has anyone ever seen a black hole? No, but how do you know it's there? Right, you've got to look at all the things that are going on around the black hole, and he taught me how to sort of use that kind of insight. But we were lucky because we had a boss
Yeah.
called Martin Cordingley,
Yeah.
who, who who lovely man, hadn't got a clue how to manage us. Really didn't, really couldn't lock us down. It was
Yeah.
he was trying to manage us was, as he says, was trying to nail a blancmange to the wall. It's just impossible. So he let us go and do what we wanted to do, and he ran rearguard action from the execs for
Okay.
us, the board, basically the European board, which is a guy who really let us get away with it, and again. A nightmare at the time, but actually a very nice man. Pablo Sanchez Lozano was our
Right.
sort of big senior VP who was running the business, and I think he was quietly very happy. Although if he always told us off, but I'm sure he was very happy. Um, so yeah, so that was that. Those were group of people. Kelly DeCourcy, is worth a mention in there,
Yeah.
but who sort of opened up her thinking to it all, and various different people. And William as well really responded well to it all.
Yeah.
So there was a sort of a very sort of collegiate group of people that were prepared to stick their necks out a little bit and get the job done. So
Yeah.
yeah, excellent,
I think
good fun.
looking, I mean, the kind of lessons, I guess, if it's sort of reflecting about the starting point, was about stakeholder management and stakeholder support, because without that, I think it would have been been impossible, I think, to have done the things that
Yeah,
you've done. And it makes me sort of come back to some of the frameworks, though we didn't consciously follow sort of Kotter's guiding coalition. But what you've just described is you had a sort of core of individuals. You had Alan, Kelly, Martin, yourself, William, and possibly one or two others that came in, like Brigitte and
oh,
so on.
Brigitte, She came in and she breath of fresh air, totally
Yeah,
thinks outside the box.
I
She
know.
came a little bit later into the
A bit
situation,
later she did.
and again
Yeah,
the flair and creativity around the commercial models and the insights to it. She
yeah,
just incredibly bright person, incredibly
yeah,
bright person. Added
yeah,
so much to it.
and added so much. So
Yeah,
yeah, I think that's great. And funnily enough, Mike, and I thought of you uh, the other day because I found myself in Woodstock, and I don't know if you remember,
I do.
but the very first workshop that we did together with I think it was Network Rail. That was the very first one we did, and it's funny because I was in Woodstock with my wife, and I said to my I said to my wife, I've been here before, and she said, not with me. So we then
It
had
was
this.
me.
I then tried to wrap my brain and say, I know I've been here before. And then of course, you wanted to go off site. You wanted to bring, the team together for this very first pilot, uh, which was Network Rail, where we could start to test out some of the ideas and the thinking in the training workshop. But
Yeah, it was
it was
the Prince of Wales we stayed in, which was a 500-year old pub that was falling down. I remember it very well. Couldn't
yeah,
sleep.
I know.
I
You
know.
managed, the budget wasn't too high because I think that
No.
it looked nice from the outside. It looked impressive. It still does, actually, Mike.
Yeah. Yeah, very good. Very good.
But,
So
but yeah, so sorry, I just mentioned that because it was sort of realizing that we were going to have this podcast shortly afterwards. It was just quite nice to go back and see where that first event started, which was the first WVP workshop that we ran, I believe.
yeah, so you were asking about lessons and
Yeah, that's right.
what
So I think I think again for the listener, could you explain the sort of size of deals that you were working on? Because I think for some,
sure.
it's difficult to sort of grasp quite the magnitude of the opportunities that were involved.
So probably the smallest deal that we were working on at the time was $50 million US dollars.
Yeah,
Some of them were over $1 billion US dollars.
yeah,
Um, the some of the biggest deals have been um, core deals of around €1.5 billion was one I did
yeah,
recently. Well, my last big deal, but that had a whole plethora of deals hanging off of it, which sort of brought it up to the sort of several billion mark.
okay,
So that's the kind. An average deal was about 150 to 200 million
yeah,
US dollars. I would suggest that's the kind of
yeah,
size. Yeah,
yeah,
and the bid budgets on these deals were a million to $2 million. So you're talking a
yeah,
big, and they can take anywhere from nine months to 2 years to bring home. I mean,
yeah,
these are big undertakings. 40 to 80 people working on these deals. These are
yeah,
big, complex things we're talking
right,
about.
yeah. No, I think yeah, the scale of the deals and the complexity of the deals and the risk associated with winning or not winning, because the worst kind of deal to lose is the one where you come second, isn't it? Because you're taken right up to that end point,
That's right. Yeah.
yeah, and incurred all the pre-sales costs involved in doing that, but then to fail at the last point is painful, both commercially as well as the emotional kind of attachment you get, from the team into wanting to win these deals.
What you do.
Yeah,
You really, when you're on these deals, you really bond as a group, and
yeah,
you make very deep friendships within
yeah,
within those deal teams. And
yeah,
years later you can make a phone call and those people will be there. So that's
yeah, absolutely.
it's a wonderful experience.
Okay,
So
so these are the size of the deals. So lessons learned, Mike. What for you were some of the highs and the, well, the great lessons you think you learned that you got, and also what for you were some of the highs, some of the lows, or what would have been some of the most fun deals you've worked on, and perhaps what made it fun?
Well, most of them have been fun actually, because if you're going to be with people for so long, you have to make it fun. It's absolutely imperative that people smile
Yeah.
every day. A lot of hard work. I guess the most disappointing deal that we did was a big European. I'll make it non-specific.
Yes.
Bank in the early days, where we
Yeah.
knew exactly what we needed to do to win, and the board wouldn't give us the leverage to do it on sign off.
Is this the board? You meaning HP at the time?
We're talking HP here, yeah.
Oh,
Certainly
I see.
HP.
So it's HP's decision not to go ahead.
It was HP's decision to really come out the deal and not offer the customer
Okay.
exactly what we could have
What they
offered.
wanted.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that biggest disappointment. Lessons learned. Probably wouldn't have asked the board for permission next time.
Okay. But
Um,
presumably you had risk committees, didn't you? I mean,
we
there's a
had
process you have to go through in order to get these deals through. But
you do, but there's the thing is when you're doing deals that the shape of a deal after a negotiation is nothing like the shape of a deal before you go into the negotiation. Well, so that's probably a bit of an extreme. It changes significantly from the start of a negotiation to the end of a
to the
negotiation.
end, right?
Typically, when you're running big responses to complex documents, procurement and a few technical people, they'll put an RFP together,
Yeah.
and a lot of it's very generic. There's a lot of information missing, and it's big. And the idea when you get an RFP is that they're not selecting people; they're deselecting people when you get an RFP. So it's not
Okay.
it's a deselection process at the beginning,
Okay.
and then you go into the next phase, which is BAFO, and you're still bidding based on a basic requirement that they've put together in an RFP. So you then put BAFO, and then you're into selection of
Right.
maybe two from three or two from four, and then you
Okay.
take two into negotiation. And when you get into negotiation, that's when all the specifics start to come onto the table, and actually you can shape the deal. So it's a little bit like when you get a builder and he gives you a quote, and then you start asking for extras afterwards. Okay,
Okay.
it's not quite as you have to be
Yeah.
very specific and help the customer understand where the deviation is from the original request, and it's important to get that right
Yeah.
in a very collaborative way with the customer. But in the last part of the deal, everything changes, and a lesson learned, by the way, is in that process, things are changing for a reason. And the
Okay.
reason things change is because the competition that you're bidding against is coming up with some really good ideas.
Okay.
Okay. So it changes the ground that you're on constantly. So one of the lessons learned is you need to be the one that's in competition that's coming up with all the good ideas that
Right.
then backfoots your competition,
Okay.
and so when you get to the winning post, if you like,
Yeah.
you've got lots of these ideas left in your back pocket in case
Okay.
the competition try and backfoot you. So
Okay.
so that's a quite a key
Yeah. Yeah.
lesson learned.
Yeah.
But I guess the sort of lessons from that particular one was we should have really in the qualification phase set the expectation of what we needed to do in order to win, in order that our executive committee bought into the situation.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that more an internal pitch you're
Yeah.
saying? No. Yeah. Okay.
Managing your internal stakeholders is as important as managing your customer stakeholders,
Yeah. Okay.
especially on big deals or anything that deviates in any way from standard and operating procedure within an organisation. You really have to get all the key people lined up and on board within your own organisation. Absolutely essential. And lesson learned from that was, I whimsically said probably wouldn't have told them, but I probably would have told them when I was certain of the shape of the deal, rather than telling them sort of it towards the end of it, towards the middle of it. And lesson learned, really stringently managing the stakeholder communication all the way through the deal to make sure there's no surprises for them.
Yeah.
So critical on that one. So that was the deal that we won, that we lost. The customer wanted us, but we decided not to go ahead. In fact, it's the only deal that I've earned a bonus on that I didn't actually sign. So,
Oh wow! You still got your bonus.
The company recognised their position and they gave us a bonus. It was a token, but it was a gesture. So.
Well, that's interesting, because that speaks a lot to the values of Hewlett Packard, because not every company would do that, as you probably found out in your career.
Yes, I'm certainly,
yeah.
So other lessons learned. It's a good one. So we did a deal with a mining company.
Yeah. I think this one might be published, Mike, so you could mention the name.
Okay, so Anglo-American.
Yeah.
Anglo-American.
Yeah.
So as long as it's public, that's fine.
So we did. It's in the public domain, and I've quoted it in the book Selling Transformed.
Fine.
So I made sure that it was publicly available information.
So Anglo-American, how could we differentiate ourselves against the competition? Well, what I decided would be a good thing to do would be to send my team to South Africa.
Yeah.
Hire a plane. Now, mining strips have got their own airfields. So and basically send them round to all the mines to talk to the mine bosses, rather than these IT people that were trying to do business with us.
Yeah.
So we did that, and we found out that what was the thing that we were really dealing with. Well, the communications infrastructure was all satellite driven. Every time they tried to lay copper or fibre to communicate, the locals would rip it up and sell it on the black market. So that wasn't so our technology solution had to sort of accommodate satellite or line of sight.
Okay.
So that was one aspect to it. The other aspect to it really was that their biggest worry was safety.
Yeah.
And knowing where everybody was in the mine at any one point in time was critical.
Yeah.
So having basically we realised that, and as part of the solution, we sold them an RFID tag solution as part of which they wanted, and that was the thing that sort of swung the deal. Really, it was the thinking outside the box, understanding the third box, what the issues were with what they were trying to achieve, and again, a fantastic learning experience in terms of seeing how that worked and the power of that journey that we did with the customer.
Yeah.
So
I think what was really kind of extraordinary about that story as well is that I understand there wasn't an account manager responsible for Anglo-American, because whilst HP was dealing with this account in many countries, it wasn't deemed sort of big enough, I think, to warrant a GAD type person. And I think when the RFP came in, I think it sort of came in, was it via fax machine or something at the time, but there wasn't someone they could send it to. So what you did with this account, and you talk, was transform a situation where there was no relationship into one where you won this deal. It was actually done in extraordinarily quick time, wasn't it, Mike? Because I think the sales cycle on that particular deal was something like 7 or 8 months.
Well, it was because we were, and Alan in particular used his phrase, a column fudger, which is the stalking horse that's brought in to beat IBM down with. That's how we were brought into it as that.
Yes, that's right. And
So
you
we missed.
challenged them. Yeah, you really challenged them on that as well. You wanted to test, are they serious about wanting to get HP to take part? And and I think that your description of hiring planes, I mean, how many people managing deals would suggest that in order to get to understand the customer, customer centricity angle, would actually, you can go and hire a plane and go visit the GMs. I mean, this is part of being bold and being courageous and sort of, but you wouldn't have done that, Mike, I don't think, unless you'd felt that the relationship, even though you are from a standstill compared to, I think it was T Systems that were in that account, that you won the deal from, unless you felt there was a genuine interest in HP having a good shot at winning.
Well, I think I think if you looked at the qualification framework that we put together for the deal, we would have qualified out of the deal at the beginning.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
But we said, if the customer commits to getting to know us and allows us to get to know the customer in a sincere way, we'll bid. And that was our condition for bidding.
Yeah.
So they agreed to it, and that was us then leveraging to get out to the mines with the aeroplane.
Yeah.
And that was pretty key to the whole thing.
Yeah.
I had a bit of a problem claiming it back on my expenses, but it was.
Well, maybe Martin Cordingley had something to do with that, or Alan. I don't know. But no, but it's a great. I think one of the things when we started to talk about, the general approach, and it goes right back to your early days of researching your customer. And I remember that, we asked ourselves the question, how can we fast track getting to know the customers? And we came upon this idea of maybe contacting the analysts. Do you remember and then we would phone up the analysts, and these are people who talk to the board level of these very large companies on a very frequent basis. They know them, they know the team members, they watch the share price daily, probably hourly. They are really in tune with the levers that these companies need to rely on. And I think it was, for me, again, it was extraordinary, actually, you saying to me, Phil, it's okay for you to go and bring some of these people into the workshops that we ran, because it was a cost. Sometimes we would offer to put some money into a charity that they supported,
That's right.
in order to get their buy-in. So, the playbook, we're making up the playbook as we went along, but it was like gold dust, some of the insights that we got. And I remember the Adecco deal in particular. I don't know if you were personally there involved in that one, but I remember the insights we got from the analyst for Adecco, which was, it wasn't about the third box actually for Adecco. It was about the first box, actually getting the supply chain into Adecco at the time. And that then completely sort of shifted the positioning of the deal, which again was one of the deals that was won over in France, I think, by the French team.
Yeah.
But these analysts, you see, you've got research now. We've got we've got tools to get data, but there was something about someone in person talking at these events, talking about people who had personal relationships with sometimes the customer's key decision makers, that I think also took things onto a really high standard of trying to get to understand the customer.
You can, a lot of the research that we used to do, we'd do the general sort of research on, what's the P&L like, how they invested, what's their customer base, what they're trying to do, what they're saying. So you'd get that, and then you'd get a level of, operational, we're trying to achieve this, etc. That any research tool, including the AI tools that are available now, the Chat GPT and whatever else, although they're slightly out of date, but don't give you enough insight to enable you to win the deal. Okay.
Right.
at the end of the day, it's about people.
Hmm.
People have agendas. Everyone's got an agenda. Okay, they
Yeah.
have a personal agenda and they have a business agenda. And you have to get into understanding things like where the person is in their career, what their aspirations, how is this the first time that they've run a big deal like this from their side? You know, there's a whole raft of interpersonal activity that needs to be taken into account when you're putting a campaign strategy together. It's absolutely critical and key that the human aspect is put in place, because if a customer likes you and wants you to win, chances are you will. Okay,
Yeah.
and that goes beyond every element of the RFP
Right.
being measured 100% in your
Yeah.
favour. Okay, so you know, people have always got an unconscious bias
Yeah.
to everything, and part of the research you need to do is to uncover where the unconscious bias is, where the personal agenda is, the self-interest agenda. In fact, when I did my master's degree, most of my project was about self-interest within
Yeah.
within the corporate environment and how that changes the dynamics of things. So you have to understand what they are and how that plays into doing the
Hmm.
deal. Critical.
Yeah. No, I think that's really interesting. I just want to before, because you mentioned the masters, and just maybe before coming back to that point, I just want to share with the listeners um, the kind of results that were achieved over a period of time, because you set up the managed services team with Alan and Martin and the others, and from scratch, HP had no market share, and I know that in the time that we worked with you, we worked on 20 odd deals, some of which were qualified out, and some of which we qualified in, and I was lucky enough and privileged enough to have been associated with some of those deals, sometimes quite a bit, sometimes a little. But over a period of about 2 to 3 years, maybe slightly longer, the market share that was achieved by HP, and we measured this using was it TPI data,
Yeah.
and we got brand finance involved, again to look at the business impact of went from 0 to about 7.9% in a market that was hugely dominated by is it
EDS,
EDS,
CSC, IBM. Yeah.
Accenture. So and the close rates went from, I think it was 1 in 15 to 70% close rate, and the value is in the billions as we've got. So for me, I don't think I've ever seen an organization achieve so much impact over a relatively short space of time. And being lucky enough to have been involved in the control groups of, there was Western Europe, your team, and we were sort of comparing and contrasting the deals one and the other side of the organization, as well. So it can sort of, I think, completely validated your approach, and it also supported the importance of the mindsets that came out of the doctorate, and the frameworks that were being used.
Well, I'll let me underpin that with some data,
Okay, thank you.
and the approach. So um, I gave all of my people a choice, either to go down the value proposition route, or the WVP as we called it at the time, or to continue bidding based on old mindset and old thinking.
Okay.
Okay. So at the time, there were 21 deals that we looked at.
Yeah.
11 of the deal leads decided that they didn't want anything to do with this new rubbish that we were talking about.
Okay.
And 10 decided to go that route.
Right.
So we had a fairly even split. So this is
Yeah.
quite a good control group. Okay. So out of the 10, the ones that decided to go with the new thinking, we lost 3 of those deals, and we
Okay.
won 7 of those deals.
Yeah.
So 70%, which was your
Yeah.
number earlier on. And the value of the lost deal was 341 million.
Yeah, they're quite small, wasn't it? Yeah.
Compared with 4.355 billion
Yeah.
on the deals that we won.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can see there was quite a skew towards the big deals anyway.
Yeah.
Those poor people that decided not to take the advice of Uncle Mike.
Yeah.
There was 11 deals, and they lost 8, and they won 3. So it was a 27% win rate, and which was fairly standard for reported numbers for the business.
Yeah.
And I reported numbers. Okay.
Yeah.
The value of the deals that they lost was 1.6 billion.
Right.
And the value of the deals that they won was 245 million.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's for the same investment for the organisation, on terms of bid budgets, the non-WVP 245, the value of the one deal's 4 billion. So 95% more.
Yeah. No, it's extraordinary. Just shows. I mean, similar opportunities, similar markets, similar, people with similar backgrounds, but you've got two completely different approaches. It's, that's I think what became clear is the importance of having the right mindset. But it's not just the mind, it's the ecosystem, it's the stakeholders, it's there's a lot that goes into it. But it's just, it's a bit like the English cricket team, or the Lionesses as well. You can just see the mindsets, you see their determination to win, the creativity, the agility that they shared. So for me, it's a complete endorsement of having the right mindset. But sorry, did you want to say something?
No, I was just going to underpin. I mean, our heroic ladies. What struck me, obviously everybody loves to win, and nobody likes to lose, but they hated losing.
Yeah.
They hated to lose. They absolutely, you could see that by their whole demeanour when they came back that they were almost mourning, almost bereaved. It was really, really terrible for them.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's just
But that's going
an
to
observation.
spur them on, because they've got a mindset. Because I think, just in the same way that perhaps you weren't as successful with your first business, that you ran in IT, you learn from these, these experiences, and with that growth mindset, as Carol Dweck has kind of coined the term, you just know that they are winners. They lost the final, but you just, their mindset is absolutely
exactly.
Yeah, they will pick themselves up. They will take the learning on board, and they will do what they can to win next time. That winning mindset's always going to be there, and I think that that was very relevant. For you, I think as well. You wanted to win these deals. You did everything you could to win them, and that sort of tenacity and resilience sort of showed itself in the way that the teams worked. But you mentioned the masters, and of course I was doing the doctorate at the time, as this was going on. And, I remember you saying, could we contemplate doing a master's here at HP? And, you completely threw me when you sort of brought that topic up, because most salespeople at the time, I think it's changing now, would look at academia and say it's too academic, it's not practical. But you again sort of started an initiative which was to create a master's for the bid teams that you were working with. So I wonder if you could just explain, why did you do that, and what did you see some of the benefits from doing it?
Okay, so the objective of looking at some very talented individuals that worked within the sort of framework that we had, looking at their capability. What you often find with salespeople is they're frightened to work from the top of the business down into the operational aspect of the business. They always come in at the operational level and try and work their way up. Okay. So for me, that's I've never worked like that, and that's always been. But not everybody has got the buckets of confidence that I've got, and they need to be able to converse and feel that they're entitled to be in the boardroom. Okay.
Right.
So it's important to create that confidence within the team. So I looked at MBAs and decided that an MBA really wasn't suitable for what I was trying to achieve. I wanted selling, in essence, is about change.
Yeah.
And you are presenting a new paradigm to a customer, whether it's a car with latest technology or whatever you're trying to. You're presenting change and a change solution to the customer. So I wanted them to understand, the mechanics of a business, which is your MBA. That gives you what how all the cogs fit together and how it all works and everything. But we needed to create a degree that allowed them to understand change, to the dynamics, the psychology of change, the way change operates, the things you have to, etc., etc. So literally, that was my first question to you. Oh, you're doing a doctorate. That's really interesting. Tell me about it. And then you introduced me to
Anna.
Anna.
At the business
lovely
school.
Anna. At
Lovely
the business
Anna.
School. Lovely Anna. And we talked about it, and we collectively created something. I put them, if you remember, I put a load of modules together and elements and of what, including things like negotiation and change management and HR and all this sort of thing. And we created together, the three of us, this degree, which now has gone stellar and multiple different places, thanks to the work that you've done and other people. But we created this and we put people through this degree. I'm proud to say I was the first person to go through it, and I still dine out on the fact and tell people I was the first person to get a degree in sales because I beat you on your doctorate. So there you go.
Yeah,
so
you were, and I think what I found amazing, because I was not sure, frankly, how particularly seasoned salespeople, like yourself and the others, would actually undertake this kind of academic journey. I mean, it was academic, but it's very practical. I think that was a beauty about the way you designed it with Anna, and it was relevant. And I think that certainly gave me a lot of confidence that there was a role to play in this whole sales education process. And it sort of led to what is now the MSc in Leading Sales Transformation and Key Account Transformation and Sales Transformation. And of course, we now have the apprenticeships, which have taken everything on to a completely new level. But it was, working with the universities, you realize how complicated it is to get these programs established. And so, so again, it was a massive learning journey for us to kind of explore that, and sort of ending up now where we have so much experience of doing this kind of thing. But no, it's amazing. And I think there's a lot of people out there who've now got not only masters, Mike, we've actually got people doing doctorates as well. So in sales, and writing books.
That's excellent.
It is. Anyway, I think we've probably coming to the end of the podcast, and I just really want to thank you, and thank you for giving us your time, and also probably having to dust off your memory, a bit of the memory to recount some of those amazing times we had together.
Yeah, I had to go through the presentation that we did years ago to remember
To
some of the
remind-
stuff. So like those numbers, for instance, earlier. I thought, oh, God, I can't remember the numbers now. But
Yeah,
there you are.
no.
That's what happens when you get into your 60s. Eh?
Yeah,
What can I say? Okay,
thank you.
it's been a pleasure for me to sort of go over those old memories with you, and
Yeah, thank
you
you,
know,
Mike.
and perhaps help with other people.
Thank you.